What is up, everyone? This is the Tesla Beat podcast on a Thursday. So it's a little odd, but we had some scheduling issues this week. So we thought we would just go one day earlier than we typically do. So same time, just a different one day earlier. So we will not see you tomorrow, but we will see you again at the regular scheduled time next Friday. But as we all know, there is never a dull moment. I mean, it's been kind of feels like a short week and just a lot of great news happening. Ford dropping some big tidbits, GM, and some other things happening as well in the Tesla world. But thank you, Hans, Brian, and Joe for joining us.
Great
How
to
are you
be
guys
here.
doing?
What a week it's been. So much good news, a lot of mixed news. Some things I would mention them individually, but I think we're going to get into them all. But yeah, it's never a dull moment.
Hans, what about you? How are you doing, man?
Doing great. Yeah, it's a very interesting week and, a number of fronts. So excited to kind of break down some of the news.
Definitely. Well, let's get into it. And Joe, thank you for reminding us about Instagram. We are there. We are live there now. But Joe, thank you for creating a really cool image from Grok, Tesla Beat podcast. Loving the logo. All right, real quick. So really stock is essentially flat since last week. Again, down 12% year to date, but really not a whole lot of changes or things moving the market in the past week. But let's get Joe. I'll let you. I don't know if you want to kick this one off, but we all saw the whistling diesel. But Tesla, it looks like Tesla mentioned some things in response to that.
I thought this was pretty cool because in Whistling Diesel's video, he says like, "Hey, I wish some of these, manufacturers would reach out to us because we do extraneous tests." And then it's just really hilarious that they put out this abuser for freaking Tesla as a job. And I just thought, man, he should apply for this because he definitely knows how to abuse some Teslas. If anybody's ever seen any of the Model 3 stuff he did before the Cybertruck, it was like, yeah, he really knows how to put a vehicle through its ringers. So, yeah, I thought it was really cool. I think that that Tesla indirectly, are looking at what happened during that because they've never had this before. He made that video. They've never even asked anybody to, take their vehicles through their paces. So I imagine internally they probably had something, but I've never seen a job posting like this before. So I thought it was very interesting that it came on the heels of that, and I thought that was pretty cool.
I think that Whistling Diesel is a lot of fun. It's entertainment. It's shock value. You can do that and still be honest. He chose not to because it's easier and it's lazy. When he made that Model 3 drive upside down on giant wagon wheels, that was hilarious and fun and lighthearted. And no one took that to mean that Teslas accidentally drive upside down on wagon wheels, where you can build a social media empire without being terrible. I would point to John in this very group as an example of someone who's done well by building up people and products without all the nonsense of tearing it down at the same time. And it's just disappointing. A lot of people did very well with their videos debunking the nonsense, but the 18 million views he got are left to stand. It's just unfortunate to have to try and contend with something like that level of dishonesty.
Yeah, I would say it's really interesting that whistling, like, I think it's kind of funny, right? All of the haters of the Cybertruck, they go from like one point to the next, right? And they only have these like talking points, right? One, it's you're feminine, two, it's like it's not a truck. And then now it's like it can't tow, it can't handle, like, the chassis is going to be broken, or, for the longest time it was like the recalls. But as we know, I mean, like I was not big back in the, and not that we're big now, but we didn't have a social media following where I was paying attention to comments back, in 2018, 2019, when, the Model 3 was coming out. So I really don't know. I know what the media was saying, but I don't know like what was the general public saying. Like I just wasn't paying attention to comments like I do now. So I'm more aware of like what are people saying in the comments versus like what the media is saying. But yeah, I think now it's just like, unfortunately there's, as they ramp and get out of the foundation series at some point, there will be that, unfortunately, that education that they need to do and showcasing, in my opinion, showcasing how Teslas are really the Cybertruck, what it's capable of doing, because there will be a, I would say, again, I don't know the population of or the age of the people watching Whistling Diesel, but I would assume pretty young, and that those viewers need to be really educated on this. But again, you're talking about someone who isn't trying to educate people. He's trying to create entertainment. And it could have been interesting. He could have ended the thing with like, hey, the chassis probably broke, but it's probably because we did this in this order, right? It wasn't even like, but why would he do that? He's not going to get more views from that. But
the Cybertruck withstood so much abuse before that even happened that, it was, it just withstood. The C4 thing, like dropping it off the bed of the truck and delivery process initially, like that the Ford didn't even survive the first test of the whole thing. They were just. It's unfortunate that, of course, he's in it for the shock value and for the clicks, right? But it's unfortunate that got the highlight when all the other things that survived did not.
They didn't even do the riot test on the F-150, and then they were like, oh, look,
Exactly.
the mirrors didn't break. Right, because you didn't have a pack of rabid monkeys swarming it with baseball bats and ice picks. So I don't know what to tell you, man. It's and Joe is exactly right. They could have said, and also, but that just adds more work without more benefit. And then to give the win to Ford is like, oh my gosh, what is this, a Toby Keith concert?
It was, he probably was paid by them, to be honest. That's like
he has a sponsorship. He has a sponsorship with Ford.
Oh,
well, there you go. Why that wasn't disclosed?
Yeah, exactly. That needs to be disclosed.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting, we don't this this wasn't about Whistling Diesel, but I think the last thing is that in certain cases, where he's not having a bunch of people beat the crap out of the F-150, that should have been an automatic win for, at least in that scenario, for the truck. But the last thing I wanted to say was that it's just there was just so many things that they did not do to the F-150, or really the Ford truck, that they should have been doing, because just beating the crap out of it, it's like, I don't care if my mirror breaks. The fact that people can literally have pickaxes and beat the crap, keep me safe, that matters more than even whether some of the things on the inside of my door hang on. Sure, close my door, but at least it's going to stay shut and I'm going to stay safe. So yeah.
Well, it's hard to do a riot test when you've got holes in your doors because you failed the C4 test to begin with.
Yeah,
exactly. They're just going to go through the tunnel and then beat you up. All right. So I think this is probably what's been on top of mind. I don't know if we want to handle, we can handle these separately, because I think each company is kind of different, but Ford had something as well. But the big news for this week was GM is cutting more fat. They confirmed the layoffs initially reported by CNBC in a statement. As we build GM's future, we must simplify for speed and excellence, make bold choices, and prioritize the investments that will have the greatest impact. And it looks like they laid off 1,000 salaried software and service employees. What were your thoughts on that? when you saw this news? And
I
does
think
this
the real news was that they had 1,000 software and service employees, because I don't know what the heck they were doing. And simplifying, we got to simplify for excellence, you guys. You know how much faster we could build this if we forget the sprinklers? It's going to be fast. It's going to be simple. It's going to be greatness is what it's going to be. What could go wrong? Software is really hard, and Tesla has unique advantage. And I say unique because it shouldn't be an advantage, is the software. The car just works. The integration just works. All the screen works. And this is an area that I was absolutely confident the other guys would have already caught up on, and they're nowhere close. Once all the other cars have good working software, infotainment, battery management, all of that, the cars are going to be, the competitive advantage is going to be a lot smaller. Get it solved, guys. I don't know what to tell you. And yeah, saying get it solved makes it sound like an easy problem, but you've had forever to do it. You should have been doing this 20 years ago, definitely 10. And if not 5 years ago, what on earth have you been doing? Maybe these people needed to be cut, but I don't know where you find the right people to replace them. And outsourcing all of that is not going to be an automatic solution.
Yeah, they to me, what a weird cut, right? Software and service. Like, I just it's like, of all the departments to cut, those seem like the ones that you should probably not cut during these times, I would think. But I mean, it is what it is.
I mean, to me, it doesn't matter how many people they do have or don't have. Like, they're just not going to make good software regardless of what the headcount is. So it's kind of a moot point.
Dang, Hans. No Vaseline, Hans.
Yeah, I would say I agree with what you're saying. I think I would say more important. Like, I would probably my thought is, I think of what Brian was saying. Like, really, at the end of the day, you're cutting off the brain, if anything, right? The software is going to lead the innovation, but the problem is that, unfortunately, I don't know if these legacy companies can really build the brain based on the way that the business model is set up. And that's because they have outsourced every single part to different suppliers, coding in 50 different languages. So trying to bring that nucleus together, like, you would literally, it would be like, I don't know, it would be like going into, what is it, a data center, and having no idea what to do when you're told to go turn off one thing, right? It's like walking into something, you have no idea what you're doing. And so then it becomes, the GM has to become the expert in all of those 50 different languages to make the nucleus or the brain work. So it's weird, because it's like, that is the competitive advantage, would be your software. It's not going to be whether or not you make the safest car. Sure, that's a great advantage, but ultimately the future is going to be, the software that's going to be layered into all these cars, especially as we think of a world where these cars are tiny lounges and really, robo taxis. So, I think we had some time to sit down with Jim this past weekend, and that was really interesting. But at the end of the day, I mean, we saw, we might as well get into it, but we saw the announcements that they made. The Ford cuts weight to go faster. So it's, I think they're delaying the production on the next generation all-electric pickup truck at the new plant in Tennessee. They're canceling plans for a 3-row electric EV. Instead, Ford will prioritize the development of hybrid models, as well as electric commercial vehicles, such as new electric commercial van in 2026, followed by 2 pickup trucks in 2027. The pickups are expected to be a full-size truck, which will be produced in 2027 at the Tennessee plant that's currently under construction, and a new mid-size truck being developed by a specialized Skunk Works team in California.
Now, I can give some defense to this, because this is, of course, we're EV people, so we look at this and say, that's suicide. What are you doing? But I can give some defense to this. They know how to sell gas vehicles at a profit. And when it comes to their strategy of wait, it's worked so far. Let the batteries catch up. Let the market catch up. Let the charging network catch up, because then when we do launch, it is easier. Batteries are getting cheaper. That's going to give them more margin in the future. Maybe not today, maybe not within the 12-month window they said. So then why pursue EVs at all? They said, well, we're going to do some commercial vehicles. Well, that commercial delivery van has different value to different buyers. Some people will say it's worth 200 grand. Some people will say it's only worth 30. When they make a gas version of it, they just say, well, they're all going to be 45 or whatever the price is. And for the people for whom it's worth 200, 300,000, they're getting an amazing deal. And for the people who think it's worth 30, well, they have a tough choice to make. But if they can make these and sell them for a price that's much too high, 100, 150,000, they will still get buyers. There are still customers for whom that makes sense. And they can keep that. What they said in one of the releases is that we want our new EVs to be profitable within 12 months. When we release something, we need that money back to move forward. And if they're doing commercial vehicles, they can do that. And on passenger vehicles, they're going to struggle because you can't make your money back in 12 months. It's just, the road is just too long. Even when you've got the economies of scale that Ford could bring to the table, they just can't do it. So I think that's how I would defend it.
So I'm with you 100% on what you said. And I will also say, just to add on to that, after talking with Jim, he totally understands everything that you said, as well as he understands that software is where they need to be. Now, the delay of these things, we look at it as a problem, but the truth of the matter is that Tesla was so early that everybody just seems late. And unfortunately, it's really not that late. The world has yet to catch up. You know what I mean? The TAM is still there. And so even though Tesla was so early and it looks like everybody is so incredibly late, realistically, they've probably got another decade. And that's sad to say, but it's truthfully, as we see how slowly things move and how people make their choices in life, and these companies just are just drudging along, they really have this time afforded to them. And yeah, they could have started 5 years ago. They could have done a lot of things like 10 years ago, but they didn't. And this is where they sit. So it's really just a vie for second place at this point, or third place, or whatever. Nobody's going to catch Tesla. We know that, but it's still good to know. I mean, after that conversation with Jim, like, he gets it. He gets it on the fundamental level. And he told us that there was going to be some shock value coming and people should be ready for it. But everything else that he talked about in the future that he has laid out is, I can tell you, like, he is the real deal. He gets it, and he is aware, and he is on top of it.
I would add to that the if Ford is making all these commercial vehicles, that's going to help bring up their fleet average, so they won't need to buy as many credits. And then add on to that the hybrids, which also, for some reason, qualify for massive buyer incentives. And you can see how this will absolutely carry them forward 5-10 years into the future, while they wait for the EV tech to mature on its own, so that it becomes an easy thing to do and they don't have to be pioneers.
Yep.
Yeah, I would say, like, I think maybe where I think it's ultimately, Ford, at the end of the day, or really all of these legacy auto companies, they are profitable, as we know, on the gas side. And so the transition over to EVs is going to be hard. I do think it comes down to ultimately where do they believe the market to go? And two, like, what is their root view of EVs in general? Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if they do think that the market is headed to EVs, and maybe they not as quickly, which is ultimately what we're seeing with some of these legacy auto, where they're kind of pulling back or slowing down a little bit. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, if they believe that electric vehicles are better vehicles in general than their gas cars, I think it's one of those things where you want to continue to be making those steps forward. Sure, you can pivot a little bit and, continue, because, I'm making this up, for the next 3 to 5 years, people are still going to be buying hybrids. But I do think that it is important to continue to make those strides, especially when you're in a position like a GM or a Ford. And again, they're not necessarily equal in that space. I think it's just still important if they believe that electric vehicles are the better vehicles. And will, like, when you look at the fleet market, right? Tesla they don't even have a team focused on fleets as far as, building fleet cars. But, gas cars are sitting for 11 hours a day. And half the time, and when you compare gas cars versus electric cars in that space, it's just a no-brainer to go to an electric car. And again, that's a huge market, especially when you think of other commercial spaces. So that would be my only probably point to Ford and some of these other companies who continue to slow down, is that, sure, Tesla is now, as Joe, you were saying, like 10 years ahead. Now you're allowing them to be 15 years ahead, right? With this additional. So it's really on you as far as like, okay, play this out in your mind. You focus on hybrids, you delay things, you don't build the plant, you delay this, plant that you're building in Tennessee. Just play this out, like, and if everything goes perfectly for Tesla and some of these other companies, where do you think you'll be if you even execute perfectly on your new plan? And if that's where you want to be, then that's where you go. And that's probably what Ford did. But I think it's just one of those things where if they don't believe that electric vehicles are the better car, then they will continue to kind of just flounder a little bit like this. But if they do, then you'll see them making big bets on it. So that's my only thing, is that, Tesla, they are on the bleeding edge. But even if you take away the whole, FSD, the way that the car is and the way it works is just, even if you take away the full self-driving capabilities, it's still just going to be a better car. And we all know that Tesla will be working on, a vehicle that's going to be cheaper to continue to scale. So it's really, that would be my only point there. But I definitely agree with everything, that points were completely valid. So
yeah, I think you're spot on. It's unfortunate, but they're just leaving so much on the table when they could have been in it earlier. But I mean, it's just,
honestly, I think this market is one where you either need to be first or you need to be last. Because there is something to be said for just making as much profit off of ICE cars for as long as possible, stockpiling cash. And then when everyone else goes bankrupt because they can't compete with Tesla, then you go in and you buy up stuff for pennies on the dollar. And I mean, it kind of seems like that is the strategy that maybe like a Toyota is trying to pursue. And you can, do this hybrid thing kind of as an intermediary step to that. But the thing that fails to account for is the fact that, you don't just have to compete with Tesla and then try and be the, outrun from a cash perspective, not necessarily from a technology perspective, all of the slowest, OEM competitors. But yeah, if you're staring down the barrel of the Chinese auto market and what they're doing with EVs, that makes the competitive landscape a whole lot more difficult, which is exactly why you see all these government entities now trying to, the political interests of these OEMs are very, very invested in protecting themselves from competition with China for this exact specific reason, because they're trying to figure out, how do I wait this out as long as possible? How do I wait it out so that I don't die and so that I can buy up other people? And that can potentially work if they can survive the axe that is China.
so there's also that part, and there's also the other part of the Rivian and Lucid, and what I mean, like Rivian especially is somebody who does operate on making fleet vehicles. What I mean, like they're in spaces that Tesla isn't, and so you gotta not only worry about like what's coming from across the ocean, but you got to worry about what's happening right here on your own land, and how you can like take from those that are eating right here. So I mean, there's a lot happening, and it's unfortunate, but yeah, like I said, it's a race for second place, third place. I mean, it's not really going to make a difference to Tesla.
definitely, I think, yeah, it's a really interesting place to be. And it's, I think the one thing I will say is that Jim, he's very candid and transparent, and they are very self-aware. So I think that was really, really cool to watch and see how how Legacy Auto is dealing with all of these changes that are happening. All right, jumping into the next piece of news. So I think there's some context here that we'll get into, but shout out to BMW for winning a month for the first time, I think all year, if not for a couple of years. But BMW has sold more electric vehicles in the EU for the first time this year. Obviously, if you look at Tesla, they almost have nearly doubled, or not quite doubled, but if you look year to date. But what are your guys' thoughts? Maybe it could be because I think obviously it sounds like there's some tariffs going on and some other things going on in the EU that may be slowing down. But as we know, with Tesla, their first month of the quarter is always really slow, anyways.
So the first month factor, I'll go real quick, Joe. The first month factor definitely plays in. It's only the Model 3 that's getting the tariffs, and the tariffs didn't actually hit yet because they were on hold until they could figure out what the final amount was. And the tariffs are lower than we expected, but it's still going to have some impact on sales. Europe is going all electric. BMW understands this, and they've been making models that are aggressive and compelling, at least in Germany. And never underestimate the sentimental value of cheering for the home team and brand loyalty in that regard. So BMW has tailwinds on 3 fronts there, all of them helping. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is that I think we kind of lose sight of the fact that Tesla doesn't have to win in every market. They don't have to win in every region. That's not even their sole goal. They just want to sell vehicles. So they don't have to be number one. It's cool that they are, and it makes for great topics on a weekly. But truthfully, like, shame on BMW and Mercedes for not being first for all this time. You know what I mean? Like that's on them. That's not on this American company that just happens to be in your making vehicles out there. You know what I mean? Like that's totally on the German automakers. And that's what I was going to say. I'm just never been a proponent of thinking that Tesla has a win in every single market, which is why I don't care about like Lucid having a 500-mile car. I don't care about the range of the Silverado. I think there's a place for everybody and something for everyone. And you know what I mean? And those things are what they are. So I just think Tesla kind of has that mindset. We don't have to win everything. It's cool that we are, but that's not their sole focus. I've always said that if Tesla is selling 20 million vehicles a year and they're in second or third place, who cares? They're selling 20 million vehicles a year. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think I don't think at the end of the day, I don't think they have to be the leader. I think especially too once they release at some point, again, we follow it more regularly, but I do think that the new Model Y, the TAM, or the total addressable market for that vehicle, is still huge, right? I mean, it's one of the biggest ones. It's 4x the Model 3 as far as the addressable market, the total addressable market. Once they release that too, again, the new Model 3 versus the 2018, 2019 Model 3, it's night and day. It's a completely different car. You almost, in some ways, not think it's a different company making it, but I personally think that, because I've had 2 long range and a performance Model 3 in 2018, and this 2024 Model 3 Highland, it's just that great of a car. And so I think, as you said, they don't need to be number one. I do think that once the new Model Y goes out, that's going to create a lot of buzz. And at the end of the day, as we know, as Tesla continues to grow, they're going to be an AI robotics company. And so car sales are going to become less and less important. It's going to be about the full self-driving software. Obviously, we'll see how the robotaxi ramps once that comes out and is in production. All right, so this is not something we knew, but I thought shout out to Sawyer for just, I think, more and more people need to see this type of facts, and they just forget that Tesla continues to build cars in America. Most of the parts are sourced here. I mean, when you look at the Cybertruck, I believe, what is it, up to like 76% of the whole truck is sourced from the United States. Whereas I think, what is it, the F-150 and some of these other trucks are what, 40%, 35%, something like that. But as far as Q2 of 2024 goes, Ford had 47% of their Ford sales were from vehicles manufactured in Mexico and then imported in. And then for General Motors, this figure was 35%. Whereas for Tesla, everything was built in America and sold in America. So, there's something to be said about this. When most companies are outsourcing their products and their parts, Tesla's doing the exact opposite. They're continuing to invest in the United States. And obviously they're in other regions now, but those other regions can source their own vehicles and their own parts in those specific regions. So I think it's awesome that, Tesla continues to set the bar very high for, safety and what, an American vehicle should look like as far as being built here. But yeah, I don't know if there's any quick shots or points on this from the panel, but just thought that was a quick.
Well, real quick, I'll say that I think it kind of goes under the radar. Like, I mean, not for us, of course, but I think it goes under the radar a lot of the times, like the jobs that are created that Tesla creates just in small communities. I mean, like in our little Central Valley area, like just the amount of jobs from the Megapack factory and from like the service centers that opened up, and the potential of a new one coming somewhere else, like not that far down the road. Like it's like these things, like what Tesla is able to do and create American jobs is just like, it kind of goes really under the radar a lot of the times, and it's kind of sad that people kind of crap on it when they don't realize like the good that Tesla is doing.
100%. Next slide. So this is, Brian, were you going to say something?
Not really. I mean, I would just say that, people don't realize how little of the most American cars are made in America. If you look at even the F-150, the most American truck there is, it's, most of the little pieces are made in Mexico, and the engine comes from Canada. So there's, would you do final assembly? That's great. I appreciate that. But Tesla bringing production close to the market isn't just good for PR. It isn't just good for it's good because you're close to your suppliers and you can talk to them. It's good because you're shortening the days from the time a thing is made until the time it is sold. And if you can, because most suppliers are paid on a net 30 basis, if you can build a car and sell it in less than 30 days, you never had to put up the money for it. So that gives you a huge amount of flexibility in terms of growth.
Yeah, I think that's probably my only feedback too, because I grew up, and I'm not saying that this is where the most patriotic people are, but as far as like lifted trucks and truck owners, like my grandma lived in East Texas, right, and outside of Dallas, and you would go there, and I would always wonder, because everyone out there pretty much drives a truck or has at least one or two in their driveway. And, again, they're the ones, driving around with the flags, out the back of their truck. And I think at its root, like, even if you don't like, I think unfortunately, the Prius has created this huge stigma for electric vehicles in general. But if you, think of, Tesla in general, at least there's a nod or a tip of the cap that you can give. You may not want to drive one, but when you think about, if you are, saying, oh, this is patriotic and all this other stuff, you have to tip your cap to Tesla. I mean, there's, if that's the case, then really, like, it's more of like you're just trying to live the lifestyle and look like you're a patriot or something with, your belt buckle and your boots or whatever. But like at the end of the day, if like you really are representing what you're saying, it's like you have to tip your cap to a company that is investing so much in America, with building and sourcing most of the parts in the US and obviously assembling it too, right? All right, so something we're not too surprised about. Again, it looks like Tesla has released the for sale clause in the Cybertruck agreement. Again, I mean, I was a little shocked to see that. So, we'll see what they're waiting for, but it kind of makes sense, especially as they start to gear up for the non-foundation series. But what is your take on that? Are you guys thinking that they're going to start selling the non-foundation series a little bit sooner? I mean, Elon has said, I think he said even on the earnings call, like last time it was like going to be like Q3, but we know, I think this has kind of gotten delayed a little bit. So I wasn't sure what the panel thought on this.
People are still buying the foundation, so I would say that I'm sorry, Hans, but they're still buying the foundation. Releasing that just gives buyers more options. It's nobody's flipping them for huge markups now. If somebody else really wants one, they can just get one. So I think this is the right move. I think this will, if anything, allow foundation series sales to continue a little bit longer. Hans?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, the reason that you can't really flip these for markups is because now you can just go directly to Tesla and you can purchase them for the exact price that, they sell for. And so I actually expect, like, this makes sense that they've taken this away now. Once we stop selling foundation series and we go back to the queue, and the length of the queue starts to get really long to get your non-foundation series, and people will go back to doing this arbitrage, then I expect this clause to come right back into the order agreement.
Definitely. Joe?
Yeah, no, I just agree with both of that. I was thinking the same thing as, well, not that the clause will come back, but because I didn't even really think about that. I was just thinking that, man, when you look at the market right now, like you're not making any money. If you're trying to sell it, you're selling it for exactly what you paid for it. And sometimes you have to sell it for less because it's used, and nobody's going to give you the price for a brand new one for a used one. You know what I mean? Nobody's paying full price for that. So unless you're
Yeah, I mean, if you have ever owned a Tesla, just realize that, especially a new one or the latest product, you will see a huge price difference over the next couple of years. I mean, Joe's bought a Cybertruck. I bought a Cybertruck. I know Hans and Brian, you both have owned a Tesla or several Teslas. But that's going to be one thing just over the next couple of years. Like my Cybertruck, I didn't buy it for its value. Unless
Right.
I was going to sell it in the first month or two. So it's definitely going to depreciate probably a decent amount. But why did I get it? One, because I've been waiting 4 years. And two, it was timing was everything, was just to be able to get out there and make some amazing content, get people's reactions. And we were able to, to do all of that. So that's what ultimately, you paid for that early access. So I think, now you're seeing it, the market's going to continue to be more and more flooded. But I think the difference is once they start ramping the the non-foundation series, it's going to be really eye-opening just to see what's going to be or how the demand's going to look for these things, because they're going to go right back up to the top.
Right. Yeah, I would also add to that as a veteran Cybertruck owner, someone who's been in the game a long time. I'll say that, yeah, it was literally the worst time to buy $100,000 vehicle. The interest rates were super high. You know what I mean? Like there was no benefit to getting this truck when you already knew you were paying $100,000 for a $70-something thousand vehicle. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Like, so yeah, I didn't buy it to think that I could flip it, because I'm never selling it. I really just wanted to crap on the smaller people, the lessers, and just let them know that I could do something that they couldn't. But that's just me. That's just my take.
I accept.
We accept.
Just that. I know my lot in life. It's all right.
So with that, real quick, the gray is out. What is this? I forgot what the exact word. What's this called? I know it's
tactical gray. I think they're calling it tactical gray.
Yeah,
I think
exactly.
so.
Yeah, the tactical gray is out. I think it looks cool. Would I have delayed my order for it? No. But it looks cool. So those things are they are out and about. So if you have an opportunity, definitely make sure to go check it out. I bet you can probably find them at the showroom or on your Tesla Cybertruck test drives.
Yeah, and I've been saying this since day one. The truck that people are going to get a year from now is not going to be the truck that we bought, this year. Like even the early on, the first 20 people, that truck is vastly different from the truck that I have. And so I think like just what Tesla does and how they keep reiterating and making things new. Like, yeah, I mean, some people might be jealous that we have a foundation etching on our vehicle or whatever, but we didn't have the choices of gray or white. We had white. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the seats you're gonna have options for seats, and there's gonna be different color things that you can do on the interior on that front that I see coming down the pike. And so I think that's pretty cool. I don't think there's gonna be any really worry for people that are buying the truck later, because they're gonna clearly get a better vehicle. Like you see it with the Model Y, you see it with the Model 3. If you can wait and if there's no rush for you to do it, like, yeah, you're going to have a nice truck.
Definitely. All right. Well, getting into some big drops yesterday. I mean, we all know that. I think even at the X takeover, Elon was like, "Oh, cyber or FSD is coming 2 to 4 weeks," which technically, would put it into September. But you really know that this is going to take longer. But the good thing is that someone else from Tesla weighed in finally. Ashok. Hopefully, I'm saying that right. But it looks like the Cybertruck will start with parking assistance features, given that it ain't exactly the easiest vehicle to park. Who would have thought? Initial release is slated for this week. It looks like. Sorry, I can't. Hold on, let me just get behind this. Oh yeah, for the end of this week, and then FSD is expected to go in September. So. I thought that was interesting, and then even Wes is weighing in and saying, "Look, I haven't had any issues parking my truck." So, yeah, what are you guys thinking on some of these dimes that are dropping as far as FSD and parking assist with the Cybertruck?
It goes along with what I said. You're just going to end up with a better truck for those that have waited later. Pretty cool.
I'd be very frustrated if I was in your shoes and had bought this new fun toy and then had to drive it myself. I do enjoy driving, but not on the highway, not when I'm going long distances. That's crazy. I saw Tesla Tino in the chat earlier. He came to visit me yesterday. That was a lot of fun. I helped him put up a little canopy on his truck, so he's continuing his adventure. He's got almost 29,000 miles on his Cybertruck since March, and he's had to do it full meat driving. That's not what I'm here for. So I'm excited to be a late adopter in that regard, because you guys can chauffeur yourselves if you want, but I'm not here for it.
I was just going to say, you can tell that this slide deck was put together by a Cybertruck owner, because you kind of skipped over like the actual news in that thread, which is that Hardware 3 support is coming to full self-driving here very soon, much sooner than y'all are going to get full self-driving. So Hardware 3 before Cybertrucks.
And I tell you, I've been very frustrated this week watching the doomsayers scream about how, every Hardware 3 vehicle will never get updates again. Guys, Hardware 3 was getting all the updates in advance of Hardware 4 up until like the last build, until 12.5, I think. Hold on to your, come on, this is ridiculous. But a lot of it, I think, is being pushed by one particular fudster in Canada who really, really has a rage flopper against Elon these days.
Could his name be Fred Fudstone?
I do not know.
How did you guess? Yeah, he's a huge fan of me.
Oh, is he? Is he?
I sent him an invite one time to the takeover, and he let me have it. That's for sure. So I think the annual cadence is to send him an invite either way, just to see if he'll come.
It's unfortunate. I don't know why his frustrations would have to extend to you or to anyone else, but all right, I guess.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know.
Exactly.
A bad way to live.
Yeah.
Well, on the hardware 3 FUD just for a second, I mean, we just got 12.3.6 pushed out to MCU1 vehicles. So if you don't think that they care about backwards compatibility,
wow,
that's just a point of data that you should take into consideration. Now, yes, it did take a long time for MCU1 to get updated. They kind of were in the desert for many years. But hey, they got it. And I think that, we have so many vehicles on hardware 3. Like there's just, anyone with common sense realizes that the value of millions of vehicles on the hopefully closest version to 12.3 or the newest build of FSD that we can get is a lot of economic value. And so it will continue to be supported.
Yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, I think it's kind of like when FSD first came out, everyone was like, "Hey, I want to be a tester." It's just it's kind of sad, but it's just, it's kind of where, people become the loudest when they want something, especially something that, a lot of other people have, or that they're seeing all of this hype around it. So, but I get it. I've been in those shoes. I've also been on the other end. So it's just, it's not the funnest place, but at the end of the day, Tesla delivers sometimes a little late, but they ultimately will push it back. And the fact that I didn't even know about the MCU1, so thank you for educating me, Hans, on that one.
That was in last week's deck. How dare you?
I must have I must have glossed over that one or something. But yeah, it was just so thank you for that. But again, we don't have to beat this drum here too much more. But the Model Y again is the #1 most American car, and I thought, I think just some quick. I'll just hit the stats on this one. 70% of its parts for the Model Y is sourced from U.S. and Canada. The Cybertruck has 65%. Again, if you compare this to the F-150, which is like literally one of the best, it's the best-selling truck, 32% are from Canada and US, while its electric F-150 is 24%. Again, when you think of even GM and some of these other ones, it falls off. So, kudos to again Tesla. These accolades are big. All right. Google has Waymo. They're actually, they just completed 100,000 paid robotaxi trips per week in the US. So I think this is, really, really cool. It's very, very exciting as far as, the future of autonomy. But I don't know if the panel thought anything, or even if this is the first time you're seeing it, but I think that this is like a pretty big deal that they're finally, doing 100,000 a week is a lot. And I think it's a huge milestone for autonomy.
Yep. It's that's huge for autonomy. I think it's amazing. It's hideous. The vehicle is, but it's pretty awesome. It's really cool to see. Like I had family visit recently from out of state, and it was their first time seeing one. So we went through San Francisco and stuff, and every time they would point it out, like, "Oh my God, there's nobody in the driver's seat." It's like, yeah,
it's wild the first time you see one just rolling by with nobody in it. I've seen cars roll by with no one in it before. It was always bad news. And 10,000 rides, 100,000 rides a week. That is insane. So this is, I suppose, great news. It's about time. When we saw those demos a decade ago with the gentleman who had no vision, who was blind, and the sheriff is in the vehicle to make it legal. I don't know how that makes it legal, but that's all right. I was under the impression these would be done in a few years, and it turns out these are really, really tough things to do. And yeah, so let's let's I guess celebrate that success. And the sensor suite, we knew it would get a lot more refined and sophisticated, but boy, it's so seamless you almost can't tell it's there.
Yeah, no, it's that is true. And of course, as we know, so one thing I wanted to call out, if you remember, do you guys remember there was a team, and unfortunately, I did have a friend who was on this team, but they actually were part of the labeling team for the autopilot team. So it was like, when there were certain things that couldn't be identified, specifically, within, the full self-driving videos, they would go through it and label it. And then at some point they scaled way back that team, if not got rid of the whole thing. So I think, there are certain pillars that need to be built or made in order to get to, the final spot. And I think this is going to be one of those. So I don't know how big this team is going to be initially, but just like anything, as they continue to build, this is also probably going to be something they scale way down. But right now, it is really cool that they're making huge strides to get this humanoid up and running and in the factories, and really maybe at some point, into our homes. So a nod to them on them actually starting to hire for this.
I have mixed feelings. Oh, you go first. You go first.
I was just gonna, I was gonna say really quick. If you think you're taking this job and it's a permanent job, like, you're sorely mistaken. This is not going to be a permanent gig at all.
That's exactly what I was going to say is you are training your replacement. You are in the factory in some other country where the labor is going to be so much cheaper, and you are showing them how to do your job. What I really love is that the headline is $48 an hour, but if you read the listing, it's 25 to 48. I'm guessing depending on how much experience you have as a human. I don't know what the pay range is. I'm not sure how that part works. And I love that in order to get the job, you have to be 5'7" when the robot is not going to be 5'7". I feel like that's a personal attack, and I take it personally.
Hey, that puts me out too. I'm over 6 foot, so I can't get the job.
So much sympathy.
Okay, so random question though. There has to be, like, if you look at the average size to be able to do, I'm making this up, 99% of the tasks, right? There's probably a certain height that they have gotten to. So that would be my question is,
like reaching for things, you mean? Like,
yeah, or things like in the factory, they're probably, like I said, I don't know, I'm making this up. Is 5'7" that number, or is it more like 5'10", or is it, just something.
It ain't 5'10".
Yeah,
5'10".
No one is 5'10". You're either much shorter than that, or you're 6 foot.
Yeah, that's true.
All right. Well, we know always good to see royalty installing some chargers in the Buckingham Palace. So random headlines, but as we know, always really cool to see people making those adjustments, and something obviously in the news. I think last week, Joe, I don't know if you want to take this, the China, what is it, cash for clunkers that we had in the US, it's now in China.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool. I think I would actually let Brian take this and see what Hans has to say. But because overall, I just think it's I mean, the amount of money that they're putting into this. I mean, China, they do their own thing anyways, but they are getting rid of the ICE, period.
So it is a great program. It's exactly what it looks like it is. It's up to, I think, $2,700. And when you consider the average EV in China is under 30,000, this is a substantial incentive. And there's a lot of cars in the 10 to 15,000 range, and it would still qualify for those. The biggest thing in China is when your car hits, I think, 5 or 6 years old, you have to do emissions testing every 6 months. And if your car fails twice ever, it's out. It is down for the count. So they've got the carrot and they've got the stick, and they are not afraid to use both at the same time. So this will jumpstart sales for sure, but that China necessarily needed a boost domestically to keep things moving, but this is going to absolutely be quietening the streets and cleaning up the air. And I have a friend who was in Shanghai recently, and he said the difference between even 10 years ago in the volume on the street, the air quality on the street is stark. And it's the sort of thing where you feel like you're living in the future a bit. And that is not something Americans like to think of when they think of other countries. We like to think that we're the best, the coolest, and all that. And then you go somewhere where it's quiet and the air is fresh, and it's just a little weird.
Yeah, I think that the Beijing Olympics, were kind of a national embarrassment for China on the emissions standpoint. And, I would have to say, regardless of the economics of this policy and whether those are going to be good or any of those types of things, I'm just saying if I was a resident in Beijing or Shanghai or any of these huge cities, I would be like, yes, please, let's exchange those for something that doesn't create all that pollution that you then have to go around breathing anytime that you're outside. And yeah, I mean, shoot, if I lived there, I would be wearing a mask all the time and it wouldn't have anything to do with any viruses. It'd just be like, man, I can't breathe this nasty air.
It's been historically very chunky, the air in China. But yeah, it's when I lived there, I asked my boss once why all the promotional photos that we would use had a blue sky. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? I go, no, I've been here a month now and it's never been blue. Oh, well, that's fog. Fog burns off, my friend, and it isn't brown. This is not fog. And, yeah, now it actually is blue, and we can see it even from the drone flights that you see out of China. There's blue sky, and that was not a thing for decades.
Yeah, so sorry. We are coming up to time, but one thing I did want to end with was the plaid speed that the China Megapack factory is going up. So, in very Chinese fashion, they're moving at plaid speed, literally. So Sawyer put out something. Tesla China says that the construction of its new Shanghai Megapack factory is now 45% complete. Just after 3 months of construction. That has to be a new record. So it's just, I think, yeah, I mean, I remember all of the FUD when Shanghai factory was going up. Oh, it's a swamp. And, there's nothing going to be out there. So shout out to the Tesla China team. They are just working at an amazing speed. And again, the stuff that Tesla is doing in Shanghai is unmatched and unparalleled next to any other company. Because first off, they didn't need to have a subsidy or, really a partnership with another Chinese company. They own themselves, which is unheard of. And again, own in China means different things, but they did not need a partnership in China when they did this. So really big shout out to them for breaking ground and going up this fast. But what is what do you guys think about?
I have one comment real quick, and then really a question for Brian. So one of them is, I remember another factory that was built somewhere around the world. I can't remember where, that a lot of people talked about just being a field of mud that turned into a giant cash printer like that fast. So anyways, never mind that. My question is actually for Brian. So one of the things on this factory is it is 200,000 square meters, which is, roughly 5 times the size of Lathrop, which is about 40,000 square meters. So do you expect this factory to have roughly 5 times the output of Lathrop, or are they going to be vertically integrating some manufacturing in Shanghai that is not vertically integrated in Lathrop?
So I looked into this extensively last week when the report first came out, and the best I can find is that it's a mistranslation. 200,000 square meters is the site location, not the building size. And I tried to find it on maps and I couldn't, but what I did is overlaid the picture of Lathrop, which I know because I visited it with Joe, with the photo here, and it doesn't look 5 times the size. I think that's the site map. I would love to see them make it even bigger. This factory is expected to cost about $200 million, which is the factory is going to be able to produce something like 2 billion a year in profit. So if you need to overbuild, build too many, please do. Even if you have to burn them down 6 months later, you still made a profit. And of course, they wouldn't burn them down. That's hyperbole. So I think, no, these are going to absolutely be cash printers, but I don't think they can scale as aggressively as we'd want them to, because they would run out of cells. If they had one of these on every continent or 3 of them on every continent, at some point you absolutely run out of cells, and then you start pushing your materials cost back up, because now you're competing for cells, not just with other car makers, but with everyone, including yourself. So I think they have to watch how quickly they go up. Now, you were joking about the mud field. That was Giga Shanghai. That'll never be finished. And that's when I invested. I saw them building it. I saw people saying it'll never be finished. And I'm saying it's going to be finished. I don't have a YouTube channel, but I'm already counting squares. And after 10 months, they were already in trial production. At 12 months, they started selling. And what we've got today is we're looking at the Megapack factory, and we're combining China speed with Tesla speed. And those are 2 things that when they collide get real quick. And building a Megafactory is so much easier than a car factory, because Megapacks are so much simpler than cars. And as soon as the rest of those ceiling panels go up, they're going to start loading in equipment and getting it dialed in. This is moving real fast.
Agreed.
China speed, for sure. Well, in that, we got through another hour of the podcast. So thank you again to Brian and Hans and Joe for putting the deck together, Joe specifically, but for all of your wisdom, Hans and Brian. So please patronize them, give them a follow. They are tagged on both X and YouTube. Feel free to subscribe to their channels as well on YouTube, or even on X if they have subscriptions open. But make sure to give them a follow. We will see you guys next Friday at 8. Thanks for joining us a day early this week. And we will see you guys next week. See you, everyone.